Hello, I'm Claire Poole and welcome to the Climate of Sport podcast, the show in which you get the inside track on all things sport and sustainability globally. Join me every week where I'll be chatting to a special guest about news, opinion and insights on how sport is moving to a more environmentally friendly future or taking action on climate change. Hi everyone, it's Claire. I am interrupting this regular scheduled programming just to highlight an area in the upcoming podcast that you're about to enjoy with me talking to Aileen McManamon. I mention a BBC documentary in the podcast called Our Changing Planet, which I recommend you all watch on iPlayer, absolutely brilliant. There's a story in there about big cats in Brazil, and I call them cheetahs about 15 times. They're jaguars. So as you listen to that, please replace cheetah with jaguar in regard to the story. And it does relate to sustainability in sport, so you'll just have to listen on to find out why. Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of The Climate of Sport with me, Claire Poole. I'm delighted this week to be joined by OG, godmother of the sport and sustainability movement, founder of 5T Sports, Aileen McManamon. Welcome, Aileen, to the podcast.
I can't be more delighted to be here. I really can.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you. And we just spoke at length about what words we should call you in terms of introducing you to this, and landed somewhere between OG and godmother of the sport and sustainability global movement, which I think has got, nice vibes to it. So why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about your background in terms of these names I've just given you around our movement.
How did we get here? Yeah, they're a little bit at either end of the spectrum. Yeah, they're fun. I mean, on the OG side, that's when I'm having one of those days where I'm beating everybody up a little bit, I think, about you're not doing enough and you need to do this, or let's get on with that. And the godmother is, all right, team, here we go. Let's get on with it. How can I help? So I came to this, I was born a small, no, just
all the way back to the
look, yeah, we'll start at the professional end. I started my career in the car industry in Germany with Fiat and Alfa Romeo, where I was a brand strategy person. So all the brand strategy, the marketing implementation, and a lot of that was sports marketing. We were behind Tour de France at the time, and a lot of motorsport, obviously, and a few other things. So I come to this from that original kind of sports marketing brand strategy. What are your values and what are you trying to tell people? So I spent a good time doing that. And then I moved on to the tech industry because, we were into the 90s, dating the OG, underpinning the OG part of this. I've been around a bit. So I went into technology for 10 years because that was a really exciting place to be. It was going global and, all kinds of new innovative things. And I think that's been a steady thread for me. I'm always looking out what's coming next. Here's where we are, but where do we need to be? Where are we going? Yeah. So that was very exciting. We took European companies into the US. By then I'd moved back to the US and US companies into Europe. But then moved on into working for the Canadian government. Keep following the bouncing ball, Germany, Chicago, San Diego, Vancouver. So that's where I live now. And there we were investing in early stage technology companies as the government. So I called ourselves a kinder, gentler venture capitalists. In one of those areas, there are many, software, advanced engineering, but a lot of clean tech as well. And of course, Vancouver has a reputation for being a fairly green city and fairly oriented towards sustainability, more so at that time than maybe a number of other cities in North America. So that was a very exciting time and but Vancouver was about to host the Winter Olympics. And so that was pretty exciting. They had been announced in 2003, and about 2005, 2006, I was getting those itchy feet. Where's the future going? Missing sport. So, I picked up a few projects that combined sports and tech, including promoting Canadian tech at the Torino Winter Olympics. And so that provided a segue to found 5T and kind of say, all right, I want to put a foot firmly back in sport, but, I've been away from it for a while. So what can I bring to the table where people have been working steadily in this space? And, my peers as I enter or re-enter that space would have been, 15 years or so into their careers. And I thought, what are the things that I know? What are the transferable skills that I have? And certainly, you're charting a brand strategy, technology capability, but also knowing a fair bit and observing a lot at sports events about largely the waste, the inefficiencies, many of which could be driven by technology. So that's kind of where I drove into it. But I'm an economist by training. And it came from a modest childhood. So, you're very conscious of waste and economics of things going, oh my God, why would they spend money on that? So that's really how I kind of said, I think there's a space to be an advisor in this industry that helps drive that efficiency. And I'll be honest, I always came at it from the money angle to start. This is profitability. This is protecting your bottom line.
Yeah.
And, to just dovetail how I made that jump as well. In doing some research, I had, there's a fun story, reading along, and I stumbled on a presentation that Scott Jenkins, who's the chair of the Green Sports Alliance, but at the time was heading up the Seattle Mariners ballpark just down the road from us. And I'd read that he'd been allowed to rip out all of the toilets in a facility that was, I think, 4 or 5 years old at the time, not even maybe. And I thought, this is madness. I mean, a toilet fixture is going to last, 20. We've been in some venues where where they may be well older than a lot of us.
Yeah.
Like, who does that? How can you do that? That's completely uneconomical.
Yeah.
But so I reached out to him and I said, what is going on down there? How did you do that? Why, why he did it was the water savings. He said, come on down, let's have a chat. I'll share with you all that we're doing. And that was when the path was clear. It was like, this is where things are going. So this is where I'll plant the flag. And yeah.
Amazing. And I think we've known each other for a long time now. I think originally from Twitter. God bless Twitter.
Yeah.
And the little community that popped out of Twitter. But I think you are definitely one of the people in the industry that I think you have a huge amount of generosity of leadership around some of this stuff in terms of supporting others. And also I know have been supported Green Sports Alliance and Sansi and other organisations so much over the years. And I just sort of wanted to note that in terms of this journey that you've been on, that you mentioned there, in terms of where you've been in the roles and stuff. I think as an ancillary bit to that you didn't mention was all the stuff, in terms of the time that you give, in some cases the resources you give, etc., to try and support the wider movement as well. And that's obviously something you've done for a long time as well. So I think that's a big part of who you are as well, isn't it? In terms of that generous leadership and trying to move things on and trying to help and trying to drive things.
Oh, well, thank you for that, Claire. But I think it does drive my husband a little nutty sometimes, because he's like, and how do you make money at that? Yeah. But I'm like, you'll see, it's an investment. It pays off. But honestly, my own firm is a B Corp, and part of what, even before we were a B Corp, I'm wired that way. You have to believe in something that is bigger than yourself. Obviously, you're always part of an industry. There's all the fun cliches about it, but they are true. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so I've always greatly believed in the movement. Other people have been very generous with their time and insights toward me, including yourself. No. If I had to say some of the highlights of my time, there was a day I remember I was actually sitting in a conference and pops on my Twitter feed, here's the 50 women in climate to follow on Twitter. And I'm like, oh. And I'm reading the list thinking, who should I be following? This is great. And then I'm like, oh, I'm on the list. Well, that's really nice. And
I should follow myself.
Yes, maybe I'll say something smart one of these days. But it was great. But, I have to say, at one point, I was in a call and someone said, Aileen, I don't know that you realize how beloved you are. I'm like, that might be one of the best compliments anyone's ever given me. To be, so to, or I don't know the Toni Morrison quote, but to be beloved is to be.
That's not a bad thing. It is not a bad thing. Absolutely. So in terms of, I want to kind of get into, more of your sort of projects you've been working on, the passions, the kind of areas and the insights that you can bring to the audience in terms of your work. But before we get to that, I just want to touch on a little bit, because some things were popping into my head as you were chatting. Obviously, as you said, an economist by training, and then the fact that you mentioned, like, a lot of the stuff that we do in terms of driving this movement forward isn't actually based on economics. It's based on being the right thing to do. I think it's a very interesting conversation around this in terms of what we're trying to achieve, and also how we get others to get behind the movement who perhaps aren't coming at it from an altruistic perspective or seeing this bigger picture yet. And I just wanted to chat to you a little bit around that in terms of, because I know obviously the brand strategy is your thing, the partnerships, etc. And there's loads and loads in there that we want to get into. But the first thing I just wanted to talk about was this economic side and not shying away from that in terms of it being a crucial part of driving sustainability in sport, especially when it comes to brand partnerships, etc. And if I can just share a short anecdote. So I was watching on BBC now, they've started this weekly series, and they're going to different parts of the world to look at landscapes, etc., in the Amazon, California, and they're going to go back in 7 years' time and talk about the stories and how it's changed. Great idea. And there was one particular piece of it where there was a ranger who was looking after cheetahs, and they were seeing a lot of cheetahs historically being killed by cattle ranchers, the Amazon, because obviously cheetahs were hunting their cattle, therefore it was losing their profit margins, etc. So they, rather than thinking about the fact this could be an endangered species very soon, thinking that's killing my livestock, we're going to kill them first. And actually this particular ranger and her group of people had spent years educating local cattle ranchers, etc., to say, we've got this part of the Amazon where these big cats are, and they bring in so much tourism because people can come from all over and see these big cats, that it's feeding in this much to our economy. So by you killing the cheetahs, it's actually, impacting our local economy. So we need you to not do that, even if the cheetahs do occasionally kill some of your cattle. And then it spoke to some of the ranchers, and they were like, yeah, we have to see the bigger picture with this, even though it is impacting our business very specifically here. And as I was watching the show, I was thinking, it's like sustainability in sport in terms of the bigger picture stuff versus, the individual wins. And I think that there's a huge amount of that with the brand partnership side as well, where particularly people who do come at this from an altruistic point of view in terms of tackling climate change are a little bit worried to talk about the financial impetus of doing the right thing and the sustainability of business. And I think we need to be thinking and not worried about putting forward the economics of being sustainable in business to get people on board, because not everyone is going to be like you or I or others to try and drive it because it's the right thing to do. Not everyone's going to do that, and brands probably aren't going to do that. So I just wanted to share that because I thought it was interesting in terms of that particular topic. And with your experience with brands and partnerships, so how do you feel that brands are thinking about this in terms of activations, partnerships with sport, etc., and the sustainability angle?
Yeah, well, I'll come to that in a second, but I will flip it a little bit because, just to the story, to the anecdote that you shared there, it is still highly economical to be sustainable. Obviously, I mean, we're not just. It's just flipping it from very, very short, narrow thinking around the economics, the cost value relationship, or the cost return and return on investment to the longer term. Yeah. And I think where we get the wins is when we show people that there will be no longer term. But when I started out doing audits on venues for sports teams, and especially the smaller ones, because they didn't, I saw what folks like Scott or Joe Abernathy or others in the larger facilities with the professional teams were doing. I go, we can take this to the smaller teams. We just have to be able to explain it to them. It's just like the ranger explaining it to the cheetahs and going, you know what? I know you don't have anybody on your staff that will understand how to calculate this through or how to look at this, but that's what I'm here for. And I don't sell anything to you. I'm not here to sell you, lighting or HVAC systems or anything else, but I'm here to, to sell you that expertise. And that worked quite well because we never talked about it being the right thing to do. Never. We always talked about it, about here's how we can help you ensure consistent and longer term profits. Here's how we can help you see what's in the road ahead that you can't see yet, whether it's rising utility rates or, potentially, drought conditions or something like that. But coming back to brands, to tie that back to brands today, I'm much more optimistic. Actually, I think they do see it. They do get it. They understand that, the license to operate, just not just the airy fairy social license to operate, but they have a very short-term license to operate if they're not, in fact, acting on these things. The tide has turned. We're mainstream on the fact that we need to work on environmental and social issues and frankly, economic issues like living wage or, decent work, buying locally, which we all, 2020 brought that all home with a hard hit, made us understand these three components and how they're interrelated. So it's been great because my work has gone from having to work in silos, like about diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's a social issue over here. And then I turn around and I work with my environmental friends on their issue. And now everybody kind of gets that. But brands absolutely get it because you've seen, there's investor activism, there's consumer activism, but even more frighteningly, employee activism, because the employees have access to the internal memos. They know whether what you say you're doing is happening or not, because and some of them are part of it. So they will out you so fast. And that was one of the great lessons of the Black Lives Matter movement. I watched, this was really fascinating in real time ahead of Blackout Tuesday. And for those who are listening, maybe it's a little too far in the past or you didn't note it, there was a day on social media after the George Floyd murder that they said, okay, nobody on social. The only thing you should be posting on social is about this movement. And in real time, somebody had put up a Google slide deck, and employees of various brands, fairly well-known, especially consumer-facing, but also B2B brands, were putting up a template. There was the templated slide of, this is what my company says they're doing about this. This is what they're actually doing about this. Yeah. And people were it was crowdsourced. It was getting updated in real time. It was fascinating. Yeah. Fascinating. So I'm like, that's how fast it can happen, because somebody will create the framework for that information to get out there fast. So anyway, long story short, brands do get it. And in fact, we've had several of the very large global sports partners, folks who spend quite a lot of lolly on their partnerships broadly, asking how can we put our environmental and social governance metrics that we are measured internally on, that our compensation, including right up to the CEO, is measured against. How do we put that into our sponsorship contracts? So that is the future. If you're working in corporate partnerships in sports, that's what's coming down the line for you. And not really next year, but let's call it next month. Next partnership conversation, be prepared.
Yeah. And I think that more broadly as well, if we look at sports sponsorship in terms of these partnerships and the discussions around it, I think it's an area that, from our perspective in terms of covering it at the summit, talking about it through our leagues, etc., and different things, it's a tricky area in terms of brand alignment, in terms of, for example, what sports organizations are doing and aligning with the right brands to do it in certain ways, because again, there's always this if a brand, depending on what sector a brand is active in, it might come from heavy industry, so therefore on paper is a polluter of the earth. That's not ideal to align with, but they might be doing a great deal within that to, whether it's with their employees, whether it's on the environment, whether it's on the social side, there can be good stuff within that too, but it's hard for the public to get past in terms of the quick judgment of alignment. And I guess I'd love to get your thoughts on that in terms of, as you said, this is coming down the pike and brands need to be thinking about this, but where brands, if it's aviation or automotive, or they've got something where naturally their business model is something that perhaps is a heavier industry or more polluting, how much further do they need to go to show that their commitments, and how, this is a $64 million question, Aileen, but how do we as citizens understand if that is truly the ethos of the brand, or whether that is marketing so that they can carry on doing what they're doing and, to the nth degree, greenwashing?
Yeah. Well, we're getting closer, as you've seen. We have some level of standards emerging that are a more holistic picture in ESG ratings that are coming largely from the financial sector, interestingly enough. And they're not like everything in this world. They are not perfect, but they are emerging, and that's an important trend to note. So we have some metrics that we can look at. If you take the time, just here, there, or anywhere to look into even one sustainability report of a company, you can look and see how they are looking at it, how they're looking across social issues, environmental, economic, transparency issues. But I think the one thing that you've brought up there is that it's really important to note we're just not in a position, nor should we be spending the energy necessarily to throw someone under the bus. You mentioned automotive and aviation. We'll take those two to start because they're both about mobility. Obviously, in the future, we'll need to get around. Yeah. We need to. We'll still need to move around. So the question is, of those companies in that space, who is moving us more quickly and more boldly to the right way to get around in the future, the better way to get around, the more responsible way to get around? And so when you dig into those companies, you'll find, hey, you know what? Like people, some people are just better people than other people, right? Yeah.
Better intentions.
Better intentions. Like students. Maybe this. Some students are better students than other students. Some grasp it more quickly, move more quickly through the material. Some are grapple with the material, but they're very diligent and intent on becoming a better student. So that's important to recognize. Are people on track? Or athletes for that matter? Not every athlete blooms at the same age and at the same time and in the same way. So I think it's important that we do need to call out where we see fouls, if we want to take all the sports analogies. Foul, offside, but while we're always fascinated with the champion, we're also quite enamored and interested in the story of that finisher that came fourth. But wow, what a story behind them getting to that level and coming fourth. Let's go with the Jamaican bobsled team. We all knew they were never going to win, but weren't we fascinating watching their journey of learning and doing and resilience? And so I think, but I will couch that for the crowd that's very, let's call it vocal and sometimes very angry. But I find not terrifically constructive. Yes, we do need to call it out. But then what's next? Please come with a constructive solution. So it's not you as someone who's saying, oh, that's greenwashing, or whatever it is. Yes, call it out, but then offer a solution. So I'm all in favor of, yes, that company really doesn't belong on any kind of sport shirt, because sport is, we see sports and the arts are the pinnacle of our society. They're emblematic of the best of ourselves. So we do want to maintain that. That's an important function, core function that they serve in our society. So we want to be careful, but let's not throw an entire industry under the bus, including energy, because we do need energy moving forward. And of course, many of those companies are the ones making the investments that we need for tomorrow. And we need them to take us there as much as we need disruptors and new entrants who are coming from a greenfield approach to energy. But, frankly, many of those companies have the infrastructure that we need, to replace every gas or petrol station with, a plug-in station. The real estate's there. So let's try to encourage them to keep moving forward and show them how that's their new era of leadership.
Yeah.
And it's
Come on, please.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say many of these companies that we're talking about are more than a century old. They've seen a few shifts. So I think a dose of faith and optimism and cheering them on where they're doing the right things while chiding them that they have more potential to do better, just like a coach or a teacher would do, is the right position to take.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I grapple with this quite a lot because there is absolutely 100% a need for activists in terms of pushing the envelope on this, in terms of calling stuff out, peaceful protest, raising awareness, etc. I applaud that. And I think that's a really, really important part of this. But I think about that a lot in terms of, the things that you've mentioned stuff. And I think our position is to try and drive change from the inside in a lot of these cases through sports in terms of decisions that are made. And I think we all have a bit of a superpower ourselves within our own roles about how we can drive this change. And not everyone should be a coach and not everyone should be an activist, but we should play to our strengths in terms of this. And I grapple with that a lot in terms of decision making of, who we should be working with or who we should have speaking on our programs or who we should be giving platforms to or how we should be discussing topics. And I think these all the time we're thinking, is this credible? Is this authentic? Is this the right perspective to take on this? And there's there's a lot of thought that goes behind it. But to your point, with a lot of these organizations, we are probably going to get there quicker if we try and drive change from the inside and make it show the benefits and drive the opportunities. And as you said, call stuff out, yes, but also come with we don't like the way you're doing this. This is the direction you need to be moving in. Here's some people who can help. That constructiveness, I think, is a really important takeaway from this.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's all, and I don't think anybody's, I think some folks are all negative. Some folks are all positive. Yeah. That's never been me. I'm a Libra, so there's always balance. But carrot and stick is a legitimate thing, and that both need to be there. Candor needs to be there. Boldness needs to be there now. Urgency needs to be there. So I don't shrink away from telling these folks what they need to be doing. It's that's you're like, oh, sorry, that's not bold enough. But I think we also need to look at industry by industry, what's possible for some and less possible for others. Like, for instance, for a financial institution to be basically carbon neutral for the most part by 2025 to let's say 2026. Let's give them a tiny grace period. If they're bold enough, that's entirely doable. For an oil and gas company, I think 2040 is probably more reasonable. And actually, we even saw in the example of Ørsted, a coal company, when you set a bold goal, often you get there sooner. So
if it's as you said, if it's a true bold goal and you've got the buy-in and it goes through every part of the business, then it's doable.
And you're checking yourself along the way, right?
Yeah.
There's so many analogies to sports in that regard.
I know.
Right?
we could have a million of them. So just to broaden it out then, so we've kind of spoken about that. You obviously have been in the industry for a long time. You've had different perspectives, and again, although you're in the States and Vancouver, spent a lot of time in Europe, etc. You're in Europe now. You've got a good global view of the industry. So we've touched on some of the challenges there already. But what other challenges do you feel as though we've still got to think about? What barriers have we got to do, and more? What do we need to see next in terms of the way environmental sustainability, especially as part of overall sustainability in sport, needs to progress?
Yeah, I think you could talk about it from maybe two levels. At the ground level, where and for the sports sector itself, I think they need more resources in terms of tools, in terms of measurement metrics that are tailored for them, and we're seeing that come along. They want some confidence with that. So I think the best thing that can be done there is continuing to foster the peer-to-peer relationships. So I'm in the Netherlands right now, where chatting with Dutch companies. We're chatting with Dutch sports organizations. We're chatting with and connecting them and what they're doing well to North American entities and vice versa. There's some very, very novel solutions on both sides. But being able to connect someone, for instance, yesterday, just saying, okay, for your golf industry, they should be talking to Geo out of Scotland that has very specific solutions for golf. Because if you want to go fast, you want to get right to whoever's got the solution closest for you to adapt tomorrow, today, tomorrow. So I think at that ground level, we just need to keep fostering the things that you're doing by getting the communications out there has been so brilliant over the years, making sure that it's out there where people can see it, where that information is out there where they can see it, helping guide them to the right resources at that ground level, and helping connect them with people just across the street from them or down the road from them, commercial buildings people. Many of the stadium people are connected there, but to really at this point reach out more into other aspects of the private sector. And this is where tapping your partners can really help, in saying, okay, you must be solving for this at your company, especially if you're a publicly traded company. So, just getting those people connected to how they get on with it. At the higher level, is making sure that we're reaching the fans, bringing the fans along on the journey. The whole power, when people ask me, so you're greening the sports industry. Oh, that's interesting. And I said, well, no, it's about more than that. We green the sports industry so that the sports industry can be that beacon on a hill for the rest of society. Our identity as a citizen, literally, of our cities, is often wrapped up in our local teams that represent us. So if we can create that representative example of whether it's what we do in the building or what we do when we leave the building, or how we act in the building, or how we interact together, create group norms, that then ripples out into the rest of the city. That's what I see. And I think that's what we all know and see, but it is time to get hard on that. And where we're short on that, we're getting there, but we do need to go a lot further, a lot faster, and right now. And I think that's where we've got to coax many of the sport organizations who haven't yet been vocal about what they're doing in the back of the house, to bring that to the front of the house. But the other critical thing is we've had some lovely examples, with Sky, and I think you were involved as well with the zero waste, zero game, and these moments where we grab people's attentions, or the sustainable transfer day, things like that in the UK. We have these moments, but it's very, very important that our sports organizations are embedding this in absolutely everything that they do, with the fan touch points, and bringing that along to, here's how you then as a fan can translate what you did here today at the venue to home. But the fans need to see more than a day, and they need to see more than recycling, and they need to feel, oh, okay, this is our DNA now. This is the DNA of my organization, and it's not just Forest Green Rovers, and actually, not to ramble on too long, but this was interesting the other day. Former head of global partnerships for Coca-Cola, Ricardo Fort, who's very, very well known in the space. He's now gone on to form an agency called Sport by Fort. And he posted a list on Twitter, and he said, hey, when you think about sustainability in sport, what are the teams you think of? And he listed, 4 or 5 Forest Green, Real Betis, I can't remember offhand, a few others. And he said, who do you think of? And I was like, and I immediately rattled off 5 more. And I was really happy that I could come up with 5 more, where not just that I knew what they were doing behind the scenes, because if it was up to that, I could come up with 200 more. But the ones who I said, you know what, these are people who are out in front speaking about it. And when I say this is a sustainable team, you would say, Oh yeah, they are actually. I've seen several things that they've done, and I believe and see that in their in their ethos, in their brand.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that with the fans as well, the brand's an interesting one, because the more as well as, especially as I see organizations doing more, I don't know how you feel about this, but I see to a greater or lesser extent, and maybe this will never change, but the sports side of the business and the business side of the business being kept fairly separate. So in terms of obviously performance, etc., the athletes, schedule, travel when it comes to the players or the athlete, that, as far as I can see at the moment, is fairly unscathed, although the business or the stadium or the organisation might be doing a great deal. And I think that, to me, talking about the sort of barriers that we face, that to me is a big hump we need to get over. And I'm not saying, well, and maybe I am saying at some point in the future, performance and athletes and teams and players, it becomes, to your point, in terms of a license to operate, it becomes intrinsic that the environment has to be considered as part of that, even when it comes to performance on the pitch or on the field of play or on the track. But that to me is a big leap in terms of getting that, because when it gets to that stage, I feel as though we will be like, this will trickle down to the fans, because it is absolutely intrinsic. And at the moment, even where organizations are doing loads and loads, and I applaud them and I love to see it, and we want them to do more, and we want to encourage that as much as possible and all that good stuff, it still feels very much like, to your point, the back of house. We're doing it operationally. We're putting out, certain communications to fans at certain times within certain parameters, etc. And we're doing more, and we want to do that. But how far are we away from breaking through that barrier? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think I have good news, Claire. I have good news.
Talk to me. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, first, as I mentioned last year, we started to see, and actually we should back up for a minute and away from sports and say, on the corporate side, that was true as well. Yeah. The chief sustainability officer was over here, and the chief marketing officer was over here. And there was a really good study done on that last year by the World Federation of Advertisers. So folks can look that up. I think it was called Sustainability in Marketing, Closing the Gap, something like that. Nice. Great study. So if people want to get a bit of a background on how do you start to do that, that was a great piece. So that is that's happening on the corporate side. That's still in motion, but on the sports side. So again, last year we had two very, very big global spenders come with that agenda going, look, we need these metrics in the contracts. We have sports marketing agencies much larger, than ours and broadly focused, saying, Aileen, we need, our clients are asking for how they can credibly bring these messages through their sports partnerships. Can you help us sort that out? Can you help us, we navigate that? So that's happening. We see even in North America, I know that I've had a number of conversations with corporate partnerships people inside NFL, MLB in particular, NHL, saying, all right, so how do we get smarter about this? But all, so reaching out to say, can you help educate us a little bit more so we can pitch this? Because every single meeting we're going into, we're being asked, what is our sustainability strategy? What is our plan? What are our measurements? How can we help them get their message out? And so that they're like, so at first they're like smacking their head going, good Lord, they are asking me these questions. I have no answers for them. And I'm thinking, well, if you just go across the hall to your operations people, they can help you. Yeah. But I did note, so, we were both just at Sports Pro Live last week. There was a little sustainability executive forum. And I felt that wasn't perhaps happening as quickly in football, or maybe perhaps the folks in the room weren't seeing it themselves yet. So I can only rely on the other folks in the room who are saying, and there were a few other people actually from other sports other than football. But saying, we're still working on our corporate partnerships people, and they still don't get it. And, but I think even there, they were saying the partnerships people are hearing from the brands And that's the steady drumbeat, is if your partners are asking, just like 10 years ago, when your partners start asking you for digital or social media activations, and up to now you've been saying, oh, that's such a side fad thing, but when your partners start asking you for things, the corporate partnerships people listen because they want to scramble to deliver. But I think more broadly and more importantly, possibly because of the lessons they learned out of the emergence of social, and largely because of the context around all of us now and the athletes' own positions, they recognize this isn't a fad. It's not a trend. So I think what I'm seeing, and again, optimistic, is that people are getting on with it. We've been successful mainstreaming and getting it's in there. And now we just need to try to accelerate and train up folks as fast as we can. And this is where I have to just say, I have loved and admired so much everything that you've been doing over the last, these last 4 or 5 years, in particular, as you've gone out on your own to really take the bull by the horns and go, all right, listen up, media.
This is happening.
This is happening. This is happening. And so let's get you trained up on how to talk about it. How to bring the audience onto it. That work has been so critical to have. Some of these what I would call thunderclap moments. Like a day where you're taking over the studio or feeding that content through a particular time where the eyeballs are there. I know you've done a lot of work in guiding the industry in the back, where they're, again, training them up, helping them, helping many of the presenters get where they want to be. They want to be there, but, really giving them the benefit of your experience and insight to get there faster, to be stronger storytellers, being a strong storyteller yourself. And of course, raising the bar, because putting it into the language that all the teams understand, which is with sport positive league tables, well, now that it's competitive, now we're on it, because that's where we see they respond, right?
Yeah.
When they know, and the media is granting them attention. We've seen that be so effective. So kudos to you on the massive, just raising the bar on the communications and media side to get it out of the back of the house. And I think you're so kind, but there's been so many people who've driven that as well. I've been delighted to be part of it, for sure. And there's loads of people, yourself and I could reel off 20 other people who've been pivotal in terms of driving that. But I think for us, as you said, the kind of sport and sustainability is 2 big tranches, isn't it? It's having the credibility, getting our own houses in order to be credible, to tell the story, and then because we've got that credibility, being able to take it to the fans. And I think it's an ongoing effort. We were able to launch sport positive leagues for Ligue 1 this week and get it out via L'Equipe, which is obviously one of the biggest sports, one of the most read sports newspapers in France, etc. And then we've done a lot of work with BBC Sport, with Sky Sports, obviously through the Albert Sports Consortium, etc. And there's loads and loads of people who are really helping drive this in the media. And I think there's just so much work to be done in that area, because there's so many stories to be told, and there's so much content out there. But again, it's just always grappling with timing and the story and how that lands and what else is going on, etc. And I think we're still a long way away from environmental stories trumping big sports news, and I don't think that's going to ever change because of our industry. Things have been done a lot. But I think where you brought that forward again with the competitiveness of it, I've been very fond of saying for years, the messaging sucks, and I think we're moving toward a better place as well. The language is really important, right? Yeah. So if we're taking the true, the true power of the platform, we want to use the language of the platform. It's not about, net zero. No one's interested in a 0-0 game, right? No. Maybe it was a good game, but you don't feel very satisfied with that result. So I think as much as it's important to talk about, the practicalities of getting to zero, I think the sooner we can kind of try to move off the zero language and talk about, that's good for the back of the house. Let's talk about zero in the back of the house. In the front of the house, we want to talk about winning. We want to talk about achievement. We want to talk about opening up new potential, exciting new things, personal bests, breaking records, so that's where we have to really focus if we want to make sure those stories get picked up, because I think it's been important to talk about the zero, but we now need to talk about the limitless potential, the possibilities.
Absolutely. And the positives, I think you're right. And I think one of the early podcast we did with Maddie Orr, she was saying, she wants to hear more of these sort of good news stories and that coming out. And I think that, again, when we talk about climate change, more often than not, especially if we think of the Winter Olympics, the upcoming World Cup, etc., a lot of that broader sports media coverage is going to be about negative things, about the impact on the environment because of it, etc. And they're really important stories, and they need to be out there for sure. And as you said, the winning, the achievement, the personal best, it also can't be about those organizations just saying about all the good stuff they're doing. We need more human interest stories. We need more storytelling. We need, athletes' journeys, or I'd love it if like an athlete could show their story of being sustainable, as part of their training, or as, in the road to a World Cup, the road to Olympics. I think human interest stories are what we need to see more of, aren't they? Rather than just the climate change is bad and sports and this is why, or we're doing the best we can operationally, and some information on that.
So for maybe if there are sports teams listening to, the best examples I think you can look to, one out of Atlanta with Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So they've got a big recycling program there for a long time. The aluminum that they collect, they work with a company called Novelis. Anyway, all that aluminum that's collected, the money from that goes to Habitat for Humanity, which is building homes right there in the shadow of the stadium. So you can see that tells fans, why am I making sure I get this can in the right spot? Because it impacts this person's life. That is your neighbor. The other one, is the what I call the circular fries. They don't call them that at the Seahawks Stadium in Seattle, Seahawks and Sounders. But basically, the compost that they have from their food waste goes out to a partner, Cedar Grove, that creates proper fertilizer, compost fertilizer from it. That then gets sold to a local potato farmer who, raise, a local farmer, small, organic, growing those potatoes. Those potatoes get sold back to the stadium. Not every game, because they don't have that capacity, but they do a phenomenal job with this. And then they become your fries again. And then if you don't eat all the fries, then the fries go back into the compost. And so I call, circular fries. But everybody can appreciate, oh my God, these are so local. They came from the state. It's just, that's a feel good story. This is a local business, and I'm, maybe I shouldn't be ordering the fries. But
you should always order fries.
Maybe that's my indulgent excuse. Well, if I don't order the fries, I'm not helping the local farmer and the local garden center. But those are two very, very, very relatable stories that don't take a long time to tell. And they reach, for a sports team, they reach into other sections of the newspaper. So you get out of the sports section, or whatever, the TV broadcast, into the social, the health, the local news stories, anyway, it's all good. I think these are the kinds of examples. So maybe look at the things that you're doing, especially where there's a local component, because that's so infinitely tangible, relatable to your fans. They've driven by whatever that is, or wherever that is, or that neighborhood. They get it. Tangible. They can see it, and that's an important part of sustainability too. Is make it as tangible as possible on the environmental side. But again, you see the connection between the environmental and the social.
Yeah, always, and that's
the economic.
They all go hand in hand, don't they? I think we obviously, because it's been a little bit further behind, we focus more on the environmental side, but everything has an implication economically and socially, obviously, as well. That always warrants underlining. So just to finish off with, then, it's always, we could always talk forever, and it's so interesting just to chat with you, but to finish off with, what's your Well, a couple of things. What's your hope for the future of sustainability in sport, where you'd like to see things be at in the next 10 years? And then also, if there's a piece of advice that you could give to listeners based on your experience, etc., what would that be?
Oof, those are biggies.
I know.
Well, I guess I'll twist it a little bit. And someone said, what's the biggest concern or advice or whatever you can give right now, or just, what's your watchword? And I'm like, urgency. Mm-hmm. So what's very interesting is, up to now, sustainability has been with the teams on the environmental side in particular, is, you went from nice to do, they're doing it at their own pace. Mm-hmm. That's not an option. And this is where I every day of the week, I'm like, maybe I should change my name to Cassandra. I'm like, we are out of time. We are out of time. So survival for you 10 years from now means you're getting on it now with bold goals, very bold goals. And the advice for a sports team is, please, let's get the fans on the journey right now. Right now. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to be a shining example, A student. The C student chases the B student. The B student chases the A student. So, and same athletes, when they're starting out, yes, of course, the person who's the world champion is their idol, but they're gauging, a little closer to home. So I think, urgency and kind of do not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Get out there, start talking to your fans. You know what? You don't have to talk to them either. Start listening to your fans. Yeah. Put things out there on Twitter every day. What would you like to see us do? What would you have us do? Put a contest, a challenge out there. Crowdsource. Invite them into the conversation. Yeah. I mean, think about it. Some of these teams have a billion fans. It's ridiculous, Or it seems like it anyway.
I know, great advice in terms of listening to them, and that urgency, underpinning the urgency and not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good is something we really need to have a mantra that we think about every day in terms of, again, Sheila, one of our good friends down under, when she was on the podcast, in case people didn't hear that one, her big takeaway, which I have used and credited with so many times since, is that change is not linear. Transition is not linear in terms of none of us are going to carry on in a straight line and reach perfection. It's just not going to happen. So, doing stuff even where it's good and not perfect, that's where we need to be at, because to your point, the urgency is such that we don't have time to do anything else. So I think that is a great message to finish on. So it has been such a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Always a pleasure to chat with you.
Always.
Look, we stayed almost on topic the whole time. Look at us go.
Well done us. So that was Aileen McManamon, founder of 5T Sports, on the Climate of Sport podcast, and we will see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Climate of Sport podcast. Please like and subscribe, and get in touch if you want to share information about the work that you're doing, if you want to appear as a guest, or you want to recommend guests, or you just have ideas of conversations you'd like us to have. You can get in touch by emailing info@sportpositivesummit.com.